It's definitely affecting a lot because like growing up, I'm used to seeing like the Big East ACC Challenge and all the big time games like the Big Ten and stuff like that. So I mean, it's definitely different because like the Big East tournament at Madison Square Garden is not going to be the same anymore with Syracuse leaving. And I know Louisville just left too. So I mean, it's definitely like there's going to be a lot of different teams like seeing now because I know who Butler's in the Big East now. So I mean, the different dimensions of the teams now and the conferences is definitely switched up. So I mean, it'll be good coming in the long run, but like right now, just because it's just starting up, it's definitely something you got to get used to after a while.
Well, the thing that I think is tricky about it, and I have a feeling we're going to have a couple more shifts in the conference landscape nationally. Because to me right now, it seems like if you look at the top 6 leagues, like you said, a lot of decisions have been made based on football, and it seems like the first wave of change. And usually you need a couple reactions to the first wave of change before everybody sort of gets it right, for lack of a better term. And the thing that I'm surprised at is a lot of these decisions are made based on football, but they're made at the president's level. And I'm not quite sure that the presidents are understanding how many student athletes are going to be affected, not just football. I mean, you think sometimes about, well, our football team will play on a Saturday, and they'll go from West Virginia to Houston, or they'll go from Connecticut to SMU or something like that on a Saturday. Well, class time missed is pretty minimal. On the backside, you're not going to miss any. On the front side, you might miss something on a Friday afternoon or something. But what I think sometimes people in the public doesn't take this into account is what about the volleyball team that goes there on a Tuesday, or the field hockey team that goes to Texas on a Thursday, or the soccer team that goes there on a Wednesday or something during the week, and the costs involved and the missed class times involved. I think it's going to get. I think there's going to be a year or two for it to all sort of settle in, and then when I think the presidents and the athletic directors start seeing the impact on budgets, travel budgets, and the impact on maybe academic performance, you might see another shift in conference realignment and maybe have it sort of trend back towards geographic conferences.
In addition to the rivalries of basketball and football, to think that the volleyball team from West Virginia has to go to Texas for a tournament, and the cross-country teams have to go to Florida, and the soccer teams have to play a single round robin all thousands of miles away, really is not fair to the student athletes. And even more than that, I think the Texas athletic director said it best. He says, we no longer can have our fans get in their cars in Winnebago and go see Oklahoma and Missouri and all these kind of teams that at one point were real easy for the fans to get to, and particularly the parents. It's literally going to cost them $100,000 to see their sons and daughters play games in these new mega leagues. So a long-winded answer to your question, you're right that no one considered the fans and the student athletes when they formed these leagues.
I don't know that, again, I think the presidents and the athletic directors are the ones, mostly the presidents are the ones that are making this big a decision. I don't necessarily feel that actually student athletes should be considered in this now. Now, if you want to, you're at a school and you develop what you feel is becoming a little bit of an issue with the conference you've gone into, and you want to maybe poll your student athletes, and you want to poll maybe your student athletes' parents to get a sense of that, I like that idea, to sort of see what they're thinking and put it out there a little bit. And then maybe bring it to your conference office or bring it to the national office. Say we took a poll of the quote-unquote revenue sports and the non-revenue sports, and this is sort of what we've come up with. We think we're in a little bit of a bind. Then I understand that. I think you can use feedback to maybe affect the next change.
I think it's definitely a disadvantage for the students because, I mean, it's hard if you're traveling from schools close by and you have practices and games and schedules like that to get to classes and stuff like that. So I know that's definitely going to be difficult, and I couldn't even imagine traveling further distances like that. You're going to be on the road for longer stretches of time, so I mean, you're going to miss a bigger portion of classes. So I mean, it's definitely going to be hard to balance classes and traveling such great distances for stuff like that for student athletes coming to now.
I think one thing it's really missing is the fact that the athletic directors are no longer making decisions. You've got college presidents who get in a room, and they're very, very good, and we respect them tremendously, but they don't know the details of how much it's going to cost the volleyball team to travel halfway across the country for a game, or the fans are going to have to go to these things. So I don't think it's legal for the NCAA president to stop this, but I do think that common sense needs to start prevailing. And your first question was, I do think it's going to slow down. I think that the major schools, the 5 major conferences, are almost done. They might pick or choose 1 or 2 more.
Well, it can really be a tricky balance when it comes during a school week. If we have a Tuesday night or a Wednesday night, hypothetically, a road game that requires us to get on a plane, we haven't had many of those in my time here, but if we have one of those, that can be really tricky, because whenever you have missed class time, it requires, you lose a little bit of a feel for what the professor wants in the class. And you can take the notes, you can get the notes, you can get copies of what was said, but you lose that sort of one-on-one feeling of what's going on in the class.
It's definitely a challenge, because there's sometimes we have study halls usually every Sunday, so sometimes we have games on Sundays now, so we do study hall on the bus sometimes, or in the hotels sometimes, on road trips like that. So I mean, it's definitely difficult balancing practice and then going to classes. So I mean, it's rough on athletes, but I mean, you get used to it after a while, after a few years.
I think right now our schedule really works pretty well in terms of our trips. We try to leave, you know, if we have a bus trip, which the MAC is pretty much all a bus league. We have a bus trip and it's a Thursday night game. We won't leave till late Wednesday night, till after the last class, because you know, we want to give the guys every chance to make sure they get to all the Wednesday classes. And it doesn't matter to us if we get to the hotel at midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning or something on the Wednesday night. They'll sleep on the bus, and we can let them sleep in a little the next day and stuff like that. So for the most part, we don't miss much class time with our travel.
Well, I think what's the bottom line in all this is obviously revenue. But the real bottom line isn't there's a need for revenue because of the high expenses. Well, the reason for the need for the high expenses is the salaries that they're paying coaches and assistant coaches. You know, millions and millions of dollars a college is now paying 10, 20 times more than the college presidents. So the real fault here is that we've taken athletics and moved it to a higher level than it should be. Athletics and sports is a major part of our society, but to pay college coaches millions of dollars when they probably would still be doing the same job for less or half of that. So that's the problem. We've created this incredible expensive sports and businesses that require revenue. Then of course you come across with television, and television now says, well, we want to get into the New York market and the Texas market and the Florida market and the Midwestern market. So now the television is becoming a factor. The unveiling of, or the founding of the Yes Sports Network, NESN, the Big Ten Network, the Pac-12 Network. So now television is driving this incredible revenue stream. So, so really what's happened is, unfortunately, that because of the excessive expenses that everybody's let occur, these colleges need to catch up with as much revenue as they can.
It's definitely different because we got all the Catholic schools now in the AAC, so the teams they're still historically the same big top teams in the country, but I mean, it's just different to see that they're not all like in the Big East anymore. Now teams are just spread out all over the country, and like the dimensions of the league, like you have teams playing on different coasts in the same league. So I mean, it's just hard to like travel. I couldn't imagine having to travel like just for league games like that.
That's hard. I don't think you can really put a specific mile limit on distances from rivals, but you know, ultimately I think university presidents and athletic directors have to make these decisions first and foremost with the academic well-being of the student athletes involved as much as they can, and they got to balance that with obviously the bottom line of making money too. I mean, we can't be naive and think that all these Division I athletic departments aren't also running a budget, and it's a business too as well. So they got to balance the books, and they got to try to make money for the university, and they got that all has to make sense. But you can't do it at the expense of really jeopardizing a lot of student athletes' first travel well-being, and academic performance.
That's definitely something you can think about. I mean, it'll be good, like if you bet like East Coast teams plays East Coast teams, and then West Coast. So I mean, you keep the travel distances as short as possible, so students aren't missing out as much classes. But I mean, I could understand if you have a non-conference schedule where you want to let, like, if you want to bring the kids across, like say UCLA comes out and plays Rutgers or one of the teams on the East Coast. I mean, that definitely will be a good thing. But I mean, definitely if in league play, I would think you would want to keep it as close as possible for like traveling and such.